Cardinals split the first two against the Nomadic Athletics, and we'll see if they can get the series win on Wednesday. But want to talk today about Jordan Walker and the comments made by his hitting coach, Brant Brown, on KMOX. It's all coming up on B-Schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer talking Cardinals baseball on Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025. Cardinals got the 2-1 win on Tuesday night, knocking off the Athletics after a brutal game one of this series, in which Sonny Gray gave up a touchdown. The pitching much better last night. Miles Michaelis, I'll tell you what, this guy is always good at home. He hasn't given up more than 3 runs in a home start since June the 10th. And prior to that, I think it was not since April that it happened previously. He has been really good at home. It's been terrible on the road, but he's genuinely been pretty good at home. 6 innings, 1 run allowed yesterday. Drops the ERA down to 4.89, so he is at least below 5. Matt Swanson, Jojo Romero came on for the final 3 innings. Scoreless, and the Cardinals get the win by virtue of an Ivan Herrera home run. It's good to see him moving back in the right direction because he had started the season so hot and then really gradually began to tail off. Had a couple of injury stints in there as well. But there was a point a couple of weeks ago when his OPS was down to I think I saw 776 maybe at his lowest. And now it's back up to 818. Where he settles in as a hitter, I think, is going to be a really interesting long-term conversation for the Cardinals because I do think he profiles as one of the organization's top bats. But, you almost have to consider that and take that for granted and say that's just a fact of life in order to then say, all right, he's worth an everyday spot as our DH in 2026, or he's worth moving somebody else out so that he can fit into the outfield in left field in 2026. But if his bat, is not that kind of bat, if what we see this year is more of a flash in the pan, well, that could get awkward quick. But I don't think that's the case. I think we have seen, and even going back to last year, Ivan Herrera had an 800 OPS. He's above 800 for this season. I think he's one of the most, if not the most, high upside, high floor, just a really good hitter. Bat-to-ball skills, has power, has a couple of home runs this week. He's done some good things. But we want to talk about another batter today. Hard to spend a ton of time talking about the day-to-day of this team right now. So when there's a storyline like this one that emerged yesterday, with the appearance by Cardinals hitting coach Brant Brown on the Gas House Gang on KMOX. He was asked a great question. Ollie Marmol, of course, does the Tuesday Gas House Gang with those guys, which I continue to say I appreciate, and I think Cardinals fans hopefully appreciate, that they get that candid side of Ollie Marmol where, Bernie Miklasz goes on there, STL Sports Central's Bernie Miklasz, does his podcasts and his written work for us over at STL Sports Central. He will ask the kind of question that Cardinals fans want to hear asked, and because of his gravitas, the fact that he has done this for a long time and has good relationships, he can ask it and get a genuine answer from guys. And that's what happened yesterday with the question he posed to Cardinals hitting coach Brant Brown about Jordan Walker, who, as we sit here today, through 304 at-bats, is hitting 220 on the season with a 587 OPS. Jordan Walker is, as of the moment, even less productive, in particular in the power department, than he was last year, which was a 619 OPS season for Jordan. So let's talk about it. And by talking about it, we'll just jump in with the quote. We'll play this clip from Gas House Gang. You can hear him, I believe, every day on KMOX, but on Tuesdays is when Ollie Marmol jumps on. And yesterday, Brant Brown joined as well. And I just feel like this was something Cardinals fans were talking about, so wanted to weigh in and see kind of where we're at with Jordan Walker. Here's a question. You'll hear it from Bernie Miklasz, and then the answer from Cardinals hitting coach Brant Brown yesterday on KMOX.
I wanted to ask you about Jordan Walker, and I don't really need to, ask a lengthy question because we know the situation. He's looked good at times this year, but then it sort of just falls back into that hole he's been in, and he's in one of those holes now. Tell us what you see with him and all the work that you two have been doing together and what progress you see, if any, and what's it going to take for him to be more consistent?
I mean, just on his like daily structure level, is at some point in time he's going to have to devote kind of more focus on preparation. We've had long conversations with this. Is not only looking at film on the starter, but also being able to come in and the first day of a series, like just take a look at all the bullpen guys, like all the information and videos available, just so we're not like, getting snuck up on when a guy comes in. When Jordan Walker is ready to be good, like I feel like it's going to be up to him. Like we all know the potential. I don't even think he knows like the ceiling. And to all these words is like, we always talk about this is like, okay, well, this is what they're doing to you and this is what you want to do. But if you can't do what you want to do, like, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to counterattack? So just trying to continue to make the point of like how preparation, how movement patterns, how, can we counterattack? Like we're going to have to give up something to get something. So for a while, until we can show them that we can do this, like they're going to stay there. And then once you start to do it, well, then guess what? You get to come back to what you want to do because they're going to have to do something else. So like, it's just a constant game. It's a big gambit of zigging and zagging. And I just think that, he's still in zig mode, and like the zag mode is just like, it's a stone's throw away. It's there. We just have to, try to keep working and have him commit to it.
So kind of cut a little bit of that together from KMOX and the answer that Brant Brown gave talking about Jordan Walker. And that is some interesting stuff. I don't think it's explosive particularly, but I know that people have a reaction to it because a lot of what is being described there does feel rather basic, especially some of the stuff at the beginning where he says, look, come in and look at what the opposing starter is going to do, but also like before a series, here's who's in their bullpen. Here's what these guys are going to try to do to you. And then discussing more at the end, the zig and zag nature of that. Another phrase that you hear is it's like a cat and mouse game, right? We know what Jordan Walker does and what he wants to do to be most successful, drive the baseball. Okay, the pitcher is going to approach you in a way that makes that difficult to do. You've got to demonstrate to him that you can meet him where he is and turn that around. Either, hey, lay off the stuff that's not in the zone because he's going to try to get you to chase. That's a lot of times what we see Jordan do. That low and away slider has been a kryptonite for him. But okay, now suddenly you're laying off the pitches that just are junk, right? And the pitches you are going to offer at are going to be the competitive ones. But now you're in a 2-1 count. You're in a 3-1 count. You're in a 3-0 count. All right, pitchers are either going to have to walk you or they're going to have to respect that they have to throw you a strike. And there's probably a lot more that goes into it than that, but that's sort of what comes to mind when I think of Jordan Walker. He's spending too much time flailing at pitches that are not even really competitive pitches. And if pitchers know they can do that to you and it's going to work, well, why would they do anything different? So that's where the zig and zag that I feel like Brant Brown is talking about comes from. And it's just very interesting to hear it laid out by the hitting coach. We don't hear a ton from Brant Brown. We talk a lot about him. Certainly earlier in the season, we were giving him a lot of credit for having the Cardinal offense where it was. It's tailed off, I think, since then in terms of the consistency. But obviously, there's a philosophy that's being deployed and that the Cardinals are trying to get with all their guys, but specific to this conversation about Jordan Walker. You hear a statement like that, and it seems to me that a lot of the onus is being put on the player there. Like I said, you can maybe say, well, that sounds a little bit basic. Why wouldn't he be doing some of those things? But I think when you kind of take a step back and imagine, all right, Jordan Walker, first-round pick, comes up, is just mashing everywhere he goes. It wasn't by virtue of his ability to read a scouting report that made Jordan Walker great in single A and double A. Right? It wasn't scouting reports that made him great back in high school. He was just that much better than everybody that he was facing. Here he is, arrives into the big leagues a few years ago, and suddenly, his natural talent can get him pretty far. That first year, even though he did have to go back to Memphis for a spell, I think that was honestly more about his defense than it was his offense at the time. I know that they said they wanted him to hit the ball in the air, and that was something they were working on with him. And I regret that the Cardinals did that. I mean, I regret that that was such a focus, because I wonder how much did that just permanently sort of tie Jordan Walker into knots to say, man, I've done what I've done to this point, and I've been very successful doing it. And even offensively, it's not like he was having a terrible season. I think he had an OPS around 700 that first time he was sent down. But it was after 2 games or 2 days in San Francisco where he didn't play right field in that spacious outfield that then the third day, if I'm remembering this correctly, the Cardinals sent him down. And it was, that's why I attributed it. I'm like, I know what they're saying about his offense, as I think we just got a little bit of a glimpse to my son's first appearance on the podcast in the background, calling for mom. But I think about that season for Jordan Walker in 2023. He finished, I know the number by heart, it's a 787 OPS in 2023. That is what Jordan Walker finished the season with at the big league level. Came back, was productive, and I mean, what the Cardinals wouldn't give at this point for a 787 OPS. I would take that from anybody in the lineup. You could take the guys who are above that down and the guys who are below that up, and everybody could be a 787, and you're going to be one of the most productive offenses in baseball, if not the most, because that's just a really good above league average contributor. And if you had 8 or 9 of those, you'd be in business. The problem for Jordan Walker is exactly what Brant Brown alluded to. The adjustment that pitchers make to you have to be able to adjust back. And it seems like we get it in fits and starts from Jordan Walker, but it's not consistent. It doesn't carry from series to series. Is that because he's, what one pitching staff is trying to do to him, he's able to combat, but the next makes a different adjustment that he's not really equipped at this point in time to handle? What is the explanation for that? Is it the lack of consistency of his playing time? Because obviously, that's a factor in this as well. We've talked a lot about how once Nolan Gorman got to play regularly, we saw that big step forward from him in the consistency. The problem is, though, with Jordan, it really feels like it's day to day. There will be a day where it looks like he's just completely lost, and we are grasping, trying to find and identify something positive from his game, from his day, so that we can latch onto that and say, here comes Jordan Walker. And we've done it a number of times. I've certainly done it. I want Jordan Walker to be successful. Sue me. But I think if we step back and realize it's going to take more than just a day or two of progress, it's going to take, maybe it sounds like a fundamental change, because as Brant Brown said, once Jordan Walker's ready to be good in this league, he will be. I mean, that's really interesting to me to hear. Once Jordan Walker's ready to be good and do the things that it's going to take for him to be good, it's as much as this comes off as like, man, they're really putting the onus on Walker. I mean, they're really throwing the gauntlet down. He also said that's a stone's throw away. He's a stone's throw away from being able to do these things, in the opinion of the Cardinals. But it has to happen, or you're not going to get anywhere. And it feels like an appropriate time. Like, I wonder, like, Brant Brown, has not done those types of interviews often, to my recollection. And it feels like kind of an appropriate time to do like a public throw down the gauntlet on Jordan Walker. I don't know how a kid reacts to that, but we can't put the kid gloves on Jordan Walker or anybody else just because they're 23 years old at this point. Third year in the big leagues, I mean, is it a little bit uncomfortable to have a guy, your hitting coach talking about you like that on local radio on the flagship of the St. Louis Cardinals? Sure. Yeah, I could see that. You know what else is uncomfortable? A 587 OPS or whatever I said he's got. That's uncomfortable because you don't get bestowed playing time with those types of numbers. His OPS is 200 points lower than it was in 2023, which was, a kind of an incomplete season in and of itself. And he struck out 104 times that year in 465 plate appearances. This year, he struck out 104 times, the same number, in 137 fewer plate appearances. I mean, he has regressed over the last 2 years. There's no question about that. He has the physical tools. Is the mental side of it at this point so overwhelming that he is, like, it's got to be to an extent overwhelming to be again, the best player on every team you've been on, and then you get to this point and you can't seem to break through. And you've got a lot of people in your ear telling you different things. You're young, right? There's a lot of stuff going on in life. It's just, I'm not ready to say Jordan Walker's not ever going to pan out, but what is going to be the change that gets him to the point where he can get there? And does it happen in St. Louis, I think becomes a very valid question. Like I said, maybe interesting timing for the beginning of September to hear, Brant Brown kind of put that to Jordan Walker, because I get the feeling that it's a lot of what they've been telling him privately, and now it's set out publicly. Now, you could look at this in a bit of through a critical lens and say, well, does it benefit Brant Brown and Ollie Marmol and the public perception of things to have this out public to where it's now kind of more on the player than it is on the coaches to fix him, right? It's like, hey, we're telling him what to do. He's just not, if he does it, he's going to get there. If he doesn't do it, he's, we can't make him listen. Like, that's kind of an interesting PR thing. But I don't listen to those quotes and feel like Brant Brown is hanging Jordan Walker out to dry necessarily. But he is definitely being blunt, telling it like it is, at least how it feels like it is. Like, did anybody hear anything Brant Brown said there and say, oh, man, how could he say that about Jordan Walker? That doesn't. No, I don't think anybody's reacting that way. They're surprised maybe that they're seeing that they're hearing that, and who they're hearing it from, and that they're hearing it on public St. Louis sports radio on the flagship. But, like, does anybody hear that and combine it with having watched Jordan Walker play and say, oh, I don't see what they're talking about? No, I feel like it makes perfect sense what he's saying. I feel bad. It's an uncomfortable situation because you want to see Jordan Walker succeed. But right now he's not even playing well enough to be able to get that quote-unquote runway in the lineup. There's other guys. Now, do you have to start Nathan Church over Walker in right field? No, you don't. I wouldn't do that one singular more time. Ollie probably disagrees with that because he did it yesterday, but I don't. I like Nathan Church from a defensive perspective, and maybe they're just trying to. Maybe they feel like he's Michael Ciani 2.0 or 1.5, and they're trying to discern, hey, which of these guys do we keep, Ciani or Church? Because we really don't need them both as organizational depth, and so they want to play Church more, knowing that with Walker, it may not get fixed this September. It may need to be a decision of if we're going to ride with him for another year and give this another try, we're just going to have to be very stubborn about the low ball trade offers we receive in the winter. We're not going to fix Jordan Walker magically in 4 weeks of September. And so it doesn't really matter what he does now because it's going to be a completely different story by the time he gets to spring in February. Yeah, maybe. Whereas with Church, they're like, we need to identify, is this guy worth the 40-man spot, or do we need to cut him loose? Or does he show enough promise where we cut Ciani loose instead and have that sort of backup defense glove first outfielder who hits from the left side behind Victor Scott? Victor's the same thing, but I think Victor has more offensive upside ultimately and is a better defender than the other two, even though the other two are very good. So maybe that's a reason that you play more Nathan Church, because we've talked about needing to evaluate certain guys. And, with Jimmy Crooks, they're going to look at him every other day. With Church, they're trying to give him every opportunity that they can to evaluate. That's fine. But with Walker, it is interesting timing. Like, how does he respond to that in a way that we can evaluate over the next four weeks before the season ends? So what the Cardinals do there with Jordan Walker remains to be seen, how much he plays down the stretch, and I think more importantly, what happens in the offseason. I think the physical tools are such that you want to cling to it with Jordan Walker. Like, he's a classic buy low if you're 29 other MLB teams. If you're the Cardinals, he's the one guy that I would say I'm not going to sell low. I'm not going to gift him playing time for 2026, and I don't give a damn if he has to start in Memphis. It's not to say I want to see the Cardinals hold him hostage, but I want to see the Cardinals. I want to see the Cardinals be able to break through with him, whatever it takes. Some tough love. Maybe it is some tough love. Maybe this was the start of that. Maybe it's something that's been happening behind the scenes and he hasn't responded to it the way they want. I'm just speculating. I don't know, but it's notable that this interview happens. And look, I don't know that Brant Brown said, all right, I'm going to come on to this show and I know that somebody's going to ask me about Walker and I'm ready to talk about him. I'm not getting the tinfoil hat on to that perspective, to that extent. But I just feel like it is notable that this happens. because it is a crossroads with Jordan Walker. But I just don't think if you're the Cardinals, you can field calls on him and say, yeah, we'll just take whatever. We're setting out to move him, and whatever we get is what we get. We're just going to move on. I don't know that I would do that. In fact, I know that I wouldn't, because I would want to be stubborn about this particular player and use him almost as the beacon to say, hey, see, this new version of the Cardinals, Chaim Bloom, Serfolio, the different folks at Larry Day, that's more on the minor league side. But like our coaching staff as well, Ollie Marmol, Brant Brown, like everybody, Descalso, John Jay, all these guys, we're going to come together and turn this around for Walker, and that's going to be our beacon and our proof of concept that we're heading in the right direction now isn't work. Maybe a lot of pressure to put on one guy, but I do think that could serve to benefit the Cardinals if they can say, man, we know that this guy has physical tools. Right now, it's pitch selection, it's needing to put in the work, which I would hope to think he's putting in the work on the side, the extra stuff that it takes to be great. But would Brant Brown say all that if they felt he was doing enough? Guess not. So there's no level of, oh, well, man, that's really harsh to say to Jordan Walker. Like, how could they say that? I think we are way past that point. Year 3. I'm not one of those that says, you have to give up on him because he hasn't produced. I'm also not one of those that would say, it doesn't matter that Jordan Walker hasn't produced. He's only 23 years old and there's still so much time. Like there is, but also how many years do we get to use that as a reason for his slow going? Is the fact that, well, he came up at 21 years old or whatever it was, 20 years old. Like, at first, that's a nice kind of crutch to lean on. At this point, he's just one of the players that's been around for several years, and it's on all of them to figure it out. Alec Burleson had to come up and figure it out. A little bit older, had college experience that Jordan didn't have, and so you do maybe find an extra gear of patience with a guy. But eventually, you have to be able to do the things that it takes to become the guy you want to be, or you just end up not doing it. And there's no spite in it. There's no, Cardinals hate Jordan Walker. I don't think that's true. Hearing this from Brant Brown. And maybe not just Brant Brown. I understand that conversation on KMOX sparked then with the writers, with Oliver Marmol, more conversation about Walker, and Derek Gould wrote about it. I see the tweet of his article where the quote from Ollie is, quote, I need to see Jordan have a sense of urgency for the things that need to take place in order to give him consistent results. They are putting the onus on the player to say, here's what we need you to do. And you guys can let me know in the comments whether that strikes you as fair, whether that strikes you as unfair. You like it, you don't like it. Because, you guys, a lot of people come at it from the perspective of, I don't trust or like Ollie Marmol, or think he's a good manager, or think he's an authority on all of this. And so you might push back and say, who is he to say? Well, I kind of do believe him. I kind of do think he's an authority, and I do think he knows what he's talking about. And again, if we're clinging to, Ollie, who's Ollie to say what Jordan needs to do to be successful, Jordan has not handled it on his own. I mean, he has not produced to this point. And so the authorities on this coaching staff, Ollie Marmol, Brant Brown, folks in this organization, I'm inclined to go, yeah, see what they have to say, because they see it every day, and it's uncomfortable to maybe have this implication out there that, well, is he not putting in the work to get consistent results? Why would they say that about Jordan if he was doing what he needs to do? That's a weird thing to say. Well, the results suggest that there's something lacking. I need to see Jordan have a sense of urgency for the things that need to take place in order to give him consistent results. I know that there's a lot of negativity. People saying, well, saying this affects Jordan's trade value. I see a comment, reading the comments here on Derek's post. Someone said, sad that Ollie has not made these things mandatory for the whole team. I don't know how any successful manager that doesn't know how to communicate with players the club's processes and goals. And it's like, you say mandatory. This is not grade school athletics. This is the big leagues, man, as Tim McCarver would say. I like that Derek responded to that person and said, players say that's one of the things that Marmol makes very clear to them. He recently met individually with every player to discuss them. Like, Ollie cannot do it for these guys. I understand that it feels like a cop-out to say, well, why can't he inspire them to do the things that they want done? Sometimes it is the personnel. And if the players are told, here are the expectations, here are our processes, here are our goals, here's how you can achieve them, here's what you need to be doing from a work standpoint, the type of work you're doing, it doesn't say the guys aren't working hard. The type of work, the type of going above and beyond, targeted work, targeted scouting reports, all of that. I mean, what's the phrase? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. That is how it feels. That is exactly what I think is going on with the Cardinals right now. And people are going to say, oh my gosh, you're just taking up for Ollie Marmol, defending Ollie Marmol. That's just fine. Time will tell if that's right or wrong. But it feels as though there's a limit to what a manager and a coaching staff can do. Coach him up. Talk to him. Make him, But when you say, oh, they should make it mandatory, what does that mean? You're going to get detention if you don't listen? This isn't high school. He's not their teacher. He's their manager at the big league level, and they're all making millions. I definitely think the best managers have the ability to get the most out of their players, no doubt about that. But you could go back into the 10 years of Whitey Herzog is actually a great example of this, where when he stepped away, when he resigned, it was because he knew that he could not get the players to listen to the philosophies that he was preaching that made him successful in those 90s Cardinals teams. He's like, and ownership was a problem too at the time. But at a certain point, you got to know your own limits. And even the greatest managers, Hall of Fame managers, have groups that don't make it, don't succeed, teams that don't win. Tony La Russa had plenty of losing seasons. Not really in St. Louis, but elsewhere. But you know what he did have in St. Louis? Personnel that's a lot better than the personnel the Cardinals have right now, at least so far. We talk a lot about it being a young team. It's not only a young team. There are veterans on the team as well. But trying to get the most out of all these guys, Jordan Walker included, I feel I've seen things that suggest the Cardinal coaching staff are doing that. You can lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink. We will see, what the reaction is to all this, because I think a lot of it's going to be, people being negative on Ollie. But I think a lot of people, this is interesting. Again, I'm just kind of plugging through the comments here to Derek Gould's article about the Walker stuff, the comments on Twitter. It's just interesting to see what people are kind of saying to him. There's a guy named Quentin that says, listening to Skipper by Scott Miller has given me a new perspective on Ollie. He seems sabermetrically inclined and open to collaborating with the front office, yet also shows an old school mentality, especially with comments like these. Interesting combo. That's actually spot on for what I think Oliver Marmol is. And I'm just not sure people, I think people just look at a surface level view, or they see him saying something critical of Jordan, and then they take up for the player and say, oh, well, who is Ollie to be saying that? I don't know. He's not the guy with a 587 OPS. At a certain point, a player, and it's not even critical. It's just he needs to show urgency if he's going to get where he wants to go. You got to urgently want it. All right. Is that wrong? I don't think that's wrong to say. I don't think it would be necessary to say it if the things behind the scenes were happening. So you want guys to be coached up. I feel like this is what that looks like. Y'all can let me know if I'm off base on this or not. But interesting stuff from Brant Brown and Ollie Marmol when it comes to Jordan Walker, and we'll see what that ends up becoming. But let me know in the comments what you guys think about this, and we'll continue talking Cardinals baseball as we wind down the season, and then honestly it gets more fun again when the offseason arrives, because a lot of these decisions will have to be made about this team, and Chaim Bloom's going to be the one making them. So hit that subscribe button if you enjoy Cardinals content, and let me know your thoughts below. We'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.